So next up, it's time for Culture Talk. This is the segment where we integrate our faith with pop culture, geekdom, but also some hot topics. So today's hot topic is on vaccinations. I'm joined with my friend and colleague and molecular biologist, Vaccinated Roberts. Welcome, AJ.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here. I know this is a really touchy topic, and before we dive into it, we first want to just get some background so we know why you have some credibility to talk about this.
So I think the credibility that I bring to the conversation about vaccinations and using vaccines to love our neighbors is that I've been fascinated with viruses ever since I was an undergrad in college. And then I went on to do some work in a vaccine and viral diagnostic laboratory. And then graduate studies, I knew I wanted to study viruses. And so I spent my whole time during graduate school studying viruses at the University of Pennsylvania. And I went on to do postdoctoral work. And I basically spent the better part of 20 years researching viruses and how they cause disease and how we can help prevent those diseases through drugs and vaccines.
Right. So definitely some history there.
Definitely.
With viruses and vaccines. Yeah. So now let's talk about the elephant in the room whenever there's a conversation about vaccines, and this one that we're having about how we can show love to our neighbors by getting vaccines. There's going to be some pushback,
yes.
Especially if parents don't want to vaccinate their children. So how would we step into that conversation?
Yes, you know, I've experienced some of that pushback already because I've got a couple of blogs out already on vaccine safety and loving our neighbors, and then one answering questions that came as part of the pushback to that original blog. And so both of those are available on our website, and a third article that I'm writing now will also be available. But the two issues that primarily are behind the pushback is that vaccines in our country have been so successful that we're no longer faced with the fear of the diseases that we're protecting ourselves against by being vaccinated. Mm-hmm. And so it's really a success story sort of gone bad in the sense that we no longer feel the risk, and so we no longer feel the need to protect. The other reason is, you know, unfortunately, about 20, 30 years ago, there was research that was published that suggested that vaccines could be harmful and linked to very serious developmental diseases and other ailments. But those studies have basically been called into question and actually rejected by the entirety of the scientific community. That researcher and individual who published that work actually had a conflict of interest, among other things. But anyway, so that's the main reason it gets pushback. But I think we really need to consider the vulnerability of those that can't, for various medical and health reasons, actually be vaccinated. And so by not vaccinating those of us that assume a very small risk in taking actual vaccinations, we're putting them at grave risk of maybe even death from simple preventable childhood diseases like measles. Right.
Well, that's a good conversation. We've had one off camera before, and I know for me, I'm not always on top of my flu vaccination. But when my sister was battling cancer, my doctor said, you might be okay, but you are going to be interacting with her. You need to get your flu vaccine.
That's exactly right. So your sister in that situation was one of the very vulnerable in our population. And so by you getting your flu vaccine, you're not only protecting yourself, and if you're like I am, I'm borderline asthmatic, so there's increased risk for me not to get my flu vaccine. So I get it for my own health. But if I were working around small children or working around the elderly or somebody who is hospitalized or infirmed in other ways, then absolutely getting the flu vaccine would be one way to demonstrate that I care about that person and I love them through real action.
Well, thank you so much for that. So again, we can find some more conversation and some in-depth details on this topic on our website. Do you remember the names of some of those articles?
Yeah, so there was Vaccine Safety and Loving Our Neighbors, and then Facts, F-A-Q-S, about vaccine safety. And then the most recent one that I'm currently writing that will be up shortly, I haven't put a title on that yet, but it'll be something like more questions about vaccines and what about the flu shot.
Well, thank you so much for that conversation, AJ. And for our viewers, if you want to hear more from her, visit reasons.org and search theorems and theology. And you can also search for vaccines to see some of Vaccinated Roberts' articles on that topic.